Where do we start? I've asked this question many times on the show, but how indeed do you eat an elephant? Because there's a lot of places we can start
Oh,
with this.
mine. Oh, mine. Um, yeah, I was thinking about, I don't know why this one came up for me recently. There's one in particular that came up recently that I don't know if I've ever shared before. I mean, there's obviously some I've definitely shared before I'll get into, but um, there's this one story. Have you ever had those appointments where you're like alarm bells are going out. You're like, something's not right. Like, I need to
Oh yeah.
leave this house. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
This is gonna be great. Again, guys, comment below. We want to hear your crazy stories too. Christian and I, we're like that old married couple where we've started to hear all of our stories before. So I'm gonna try to surprise him with maybe one or two new ones here, but comment below. Freebie Fridays tomorrow. Not only do you potentially get immortalized into the podcast today with your story, but you could also win something awesome tomorrow on Freebie Friday. So here's the story that comes to mind recently. And the other part of this too is like, okay, I'll just tell the story and then we can get into it. Okay, so mortgage protection lead. I know for a fact it was a mortgage protection direct mail lead. That was kind of early on in my career as a life insurance agent. That was my primary bread and butter. That was my primary focus. I was working the Salem, Oregon area. I didn't live in the Salem area, so I didn't really know that area very well. But it was one of those areas that was kind of a honey hole for me. You know, if you know Oregon, it's like you've got Eugene, the three biggest cities, you know, Eugene, Salem's the capital, and then Portland's at kind of the top. I was living closer to Eugene at this time. So I'm working leads kind of out of my area. I'm in Salem. Don't really recognize this area. I end up driving out of town a little bit, and it was a pretty big property. So I'm kind of thinking, I'm like, this is good, right? You know, they've got money to spend, they can afford the premium, right? I want to say 2 or 3 acres. Like that was in my mind. I'm thinking, you know, again, pretty big property.
Yeah.
Multiple buildings on the property. So, you know, I don't know if they were all like houses. I don't know if there was like 2 or 3 houses. Maybe it was like a guest house. So, you know, I get there and I think I was the one that set the appointment. I don't remember. I may have already been working with that appointment setter at this point, but I get there. I think I had to like get through a gate to get there. And I'm like knocking on the door and it's like oddly quiet, like super quiet. No noise, not hearing anything, no animals, like no kids, like there's no noise, nothing. I'm like, okay, interesting.
And then vroom vroom vroom.
Chainsaw, no. And also another like piece of this story too is you could tell that this was all built in probably like 60s, 70s. The whole property was, so it wasn't like a newer build. Didn't seem like much activity had been going on. The lawn had been like, it did seem like the trees and the lawn was taken care of. So like I didn't think it was an abandoned property, but it had this weird feeling immediately where I was like, man, it's kind of oddly quiet, kind of a bigger property, oddly quiet. I knock on the door, guy answers the door. It is the guy that I'm supposed to be talking to. Pretty quickly, I realize he is not all there mentally, like mentally incapacitated to some degree. And this is how bad, and I remember this vividly. This is how it, and at first, you know, obviously when you're first talking, you're not exactly sure. And then you start to talk to somebody more and you're sitting down with them. And then you're like, oh, okay. Like it was so bad that I'm wondering like, who's taking care of you? Like that was one of my early thoughts in the conversation is like, surely you're not living here by yourself
on this massive multiple acre property.
Yes, right. The other weird part is I remember he kind of it was like a maze. I don't know if I went to like a different building on the property or if he took me like upstairs in the house. It felt like I was going a little too far from like the front of the house. Another like alarm bell for me. I'm like deep in this house, bigger property, older property, very quiet. the person that I'm trying to sell to is meant to the point where I'm like, there's no way, right? Like this guy, I wouldn't feel good about writing this policy because it doesn't seem like he's all there. Um, talking a little strangely. I think he was like leaving the room a lot. Another weird thing, like sitting
Oh my
there.
God. Okay.
I'm telling it slowly was like more and more red flags going up, right? More and more to the point that I just remember I finally got to the point where I was just like, hey, here's my card. Like, you need anything, let me know. And I basically just dipped, like got out as quickly as I could. I had too much. But it was one of those eerie feelings where I was like, am I going to get butchered in the back of this property by some psycho? I'm like, so yeah, that's one of a few here that kind of come to mind for me. What do you think?
Well, I'm going to tell the one that I think is the most similar for me
Yeah.
to
Okay.
that story because
Okay.
I have what I call my Silence of the Lambs almost story. It's kind of similar to that, but
puts the lotion on the skin.
Yeah. Okay, so back in the days of when I was cold calling in my first couple of years, I cold called, made this appointment. I show up at the house and I couldn't remember. I can't remember the name of the guy at this point, but I remember this appointment as well as any appointment I think I've ever done.
Yeah.
So I get there, I go to the front door. There's a piece of paper taped on the door that says, Christian, I'm in, what did he say? I'm in the downstairs area, so I won't hear your knocks. Please call this number. So I'm like, all right. I get out my phone.
Yeah.
And so he's telling me, he's like, so the garage door is open. You just want to walk through the garage and then tell me when you get to the door going into the house. I'm like, all right. So I'm like walking through. I'm there. He's like, all right, now don't go through the door into the house. Turn to your left. You'll see a stairway going down to where I am. And it's like this dark, bleak, concrete stairway going down into
I don't like this
cellar,
at all.
into a cellar.
Nope.
So I'm like, I'm standing there. I still remember this very vividly. I'm standing there still on the phone with the guy, looking down this, feeling a little creeped out. And I'm like, am I hungry enough for this app? And then I'm like, it's like a Mr. Krabs moment. Of course I am. I can't remember what he said. He's like, am I really going to defile this grave for money? Of course I am. So I walk down this. Go down, open the door, and there he is across the room. It's like this soundproofed concrete wall laden cellar type area, right? And the guy's
told me this story before. I don't remember it. I'm honestly terrified of where the story's going.
So
I'm so scared.
So the guy's sitting across the room, right? But he's sitting in a rolly chair in a smaller room with the door open. He goes, Christian. I'm like, yeah. And I hang up the phone. He's like, come on over, come here. And he's a big guy. Like I'm like 6'4", 6'5", probably 300 pounds. He's a big fucking guy. Ooh. So I kind of sheepishly walk over. And at this point, I'm 22, 23. I probably weigh 125 pounds. I'm like scrawny. So I walk over there. And as I get close enough, he grabs me and pulls me in and puts me in the rolling chair next to him and turns around and shuts the door. It's like a closet-sized room. It's really small. So we're very close proximity.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. And so,
makes me, these types of, I'm like, maybe insurance agents should have like a license to carry. Maybe they should have like a holster, like that should be part of it. This is terrifying.
So I'm like, my heart's racing. I'm like, am I going to die?
Yeah.
And
to die.
This is what I kept thinking, right? This is what I kept thinking. If this guy like got a hold of me in like in a intent to harm me way, where I am, no one's gonna hear me screaming for help. I'm in this cellar. It's concrete laden, right? It's like
Yeah.
soundproofed. Like
Yeah.
I'm done if this guy gets a hold of me. So I talked to him for about 10 minutes. Very quickly start to realize, just like you said, he doesn't seem like he's all the way there.
Yeah.
Very quickly. And I find out that he's blind. So he's going off when he grabbed me, he's going off of hearing my footsteps getting closer.
Okay. That makes me feel
Um,
a little better, I guess.
but there
I
was
don't know.
something just really off about him. He was really making me nervous. And so
Yeah.
after about 10 minutes, I pretended like I got a phone call. I was like, oh, I'm like, something came up at the office. I gotta go. He's like, what about my
Yeah.
plan? And I'm like, what about my plan? And I'm like, oh, your plan's great. You should just keep it. I think it's good for you.
Yeah,
And I just kind of made an excuse to get out. But
great plan. Great plan.
it's a great plan. I wish everyone had that plan.
Man, that's terrible. The touching's a lot. I did have that triggers another one for me of a client that touched me, gave me a hug, multiple hugs, to the point where I ultimately never went back because I already went back to this place twice. So it was downtown Portland. Really like amazing apartment condo building. This guy lived at like the top. So it was like the penthouse suite in Portland. Another, I believe, mortgage protection lead. And again, somebody who had a fair amount of money and they were looking for life insurance. They had this gentleman's boyfriend lived out of state and he wanted to get a policy to protect him and his boyfriend, and was talking about even potentially doing like a cash value policy. And I'm thinking, again, I'm seeing dollar signs. I'm like, this is great. And I remember this place pretty vividly because it was so high up. He was like, hey, you want to see my balcony? Like he's showing me his balcony. And I remember walking, that feeling, like I'm not scared of heights, but when you're like
I am
40, when you're 40 stories up and you're leaning over the edge and you realize like how easy it'd be to like fall over. I remember thinking, I'm like, this railing's not even high enough. Like that. I'm like, this is crazy. Like, this is crazy. And so you get through the appointment, the presentation. I'm thinking this is probably going to be a pretty good sized deal. I can't remember if he gave me a hug when I left. I think it was the next appointment. So then I'm coming back to follow-up appointment. I'm assuming the second appointment, this is a done deal, right? If I'm coming out a second time, I've already met with you. I already kind of know what you want. Like, let's, sign on the dotted line, get the void check, and I'm out of here, right? Like, you're getting your policy. I don't know if I felt like it wasn't really going anywhere, because again, when I get into those appointments and if I feel like it's just a lonely person, unfortunately, they just want to tell, right? I think we've all had those, right?
Sure.
Which is really sad, especially for the seniors out there. It's really sad when you get into that house or you're sitting down on that appointment, or maybe you're on the phone and it is just someone who's really lonely. They do not want to buy a policy, right? They have no interest in buying a policy, but they're lonely and they just want to talk to someone. That ultimately ended up being what I think this guy's situation was. His boyfriend, who apparently lived out of state. I don't know if that person was even real. I don't know, And so then I'm like, okay, well, I got to go. If you're not ready to do this today, then, I've got other people to see, blah, blah. I just remember he gave me this hug, which out of nowhere, and like way too, like, did not want to I'm just remember being like, no, I got to go.
No.
Like, I don't hug clients. I'm sorry. Like, and unfortunately never got the policy after 2 appointments.